Hey everybody, it's been a bit yet again, and this time I'm here in sunny Philadelphia. I'm about to meet with some friends in a little while. Just had some time to kill, so figured I'd make a video, turn the camera on, and see what happens. But been going through a more reflective, exploratory phase. I always have this in my life to some degree, but it's been pretty deep in recent times, and it's been primarily revolved around the subject of relationships, intimate relationships, marriage, gender relationships and interactions, but between the opposite sex and that sort of thing. And it ties into social media and things like that, and it's just really, really shallow, the interactions with people. I mean, you can see it, and the vanity too. You can see it on social media as Exhibit A for people displaying their vanity and receiving validation for displaying their vanity. It's basically just a bunch of women showing their ass and tits off, and a bunch of guys showing their abs and muscles and six packs off, and just trying to get attention. Trying to get validation, or trying to make a living, or get money from people, get a following, or whatever. Women get validation from getting male attention, tits and ass and makeup, putting makeup on like a clown and whatever, prancing around like they're goddesses, even though we all know they're goddesses or princesses, but we all know that they're just people. People are people, and, well, food in one end and it comes out the other. So I don't need to say much more about that, but yeah. And then men, they get validation from essentially giving validation to women, pandering and drooling over how beautiful and special women are, when most of them are just polished turds. And men are turds. They display their turdness on, more outwardly. Women tend to be more, manipulative, and they hide things and backstab and gossip and snicker and that sort of thing. But it's becoming even less and less as time goes on, really. I was never of the belief that women were these nurturing, compassionate, kind, gentle creatures, and men were like just kind of these brutes. And that's kind of how it's portrayed in the media, and subtle forms and some not so subtle forms. And that's sort of the narrative that's been portrayed on a societal level, that women are the nurturers. And you could see that in divorce court and child custody cases, where women get something like 80%. They win 80% of custody disputes. Does that mean that women are 80% more qualified as parents to take care of their kids? They're 80% better caregivers than the fathers? Bullshit. Just total, complete, utter nonsense. I never, ever believed that. Even when I was sort of sipping the feminist Kool-Aid a few years back, when I was, sort of like vegan. I was vegan, so then the vegan community at large is really co-opted by left-wing politics. The feminism, the patriarchy, rape culture, this whole Me Too thing, white supremacy, white privilege. Don't talk bad about the Jews, because then you're some sort of Nazi. Don't criticize the Jews. Don't call them out for running Hollywood and the porn industry and having all the key levels in government and politics, pushing all this bullshit, authoritarian legislation. And yeah, no, don't say that. Don't call that out. Don't call out the huge fat pink elephant in the room. Just acquiesce. Just be docile and submissive, and don't question things. Men are being targeted specifically because they're the ones who historically are going to overthrow totalitarian, oppressive governments, regimes. Women never do that shit. It's always the men doing it. And no, this is not like a woman bashing video. This has nothing to do with that. It's just the fact of the matter. Okay. And that's why 90% of kids prescribed behavior modification drugs like Ritalin are boys. It's some overwhelming number. 93% of of work-related deaths are men. 97% of veterans, many of whom have PTSD, especially the ones who see combat and watch their buddies and watch their friends get killed and blown to pieces. It can go on and on. The homeless rates of men versus women is just astronomical. Are we just supposed to believe that all those men just deserve it? Do they deserve it, or is it just that society just fails them? Men have much higher rates of suicide, all these things, especially in after divorce, and all these things. And the legislation in terms of how the divorce disputes work is really despicably biased against men. Fathers get shit on. They get raked over the coals. And for what? For this presumption of motherhood that women are so caring and nurturing and all this bullshit? I could tell you what, over the course of my life, the vast majority of my interactions with women were very I felt like I was just being sized up and judged like a piece of meat most of the time. And I could never understand why I felt I had this uneasy sort of, you could call it an anxiety, but just sort of like an uneasy feeling around women. Not all women, but women in general, on a societal level. I never understood why all my friends growing up, I was late to hit puberty compared to a lot of my friends growing up. None of those people are all my friends anymore, but I can never understand why they were so drawn to women especially before I hit puberty, because I always just felt uneasy around them. I felt like I was being sized up. I felt like I was being judged. I felt like they would just talk about dumb shit that I wasn't interested in. Most of it's just gossip and just nonsense. They're never. Most of them didn't have very good senses of humor. They weren't very funny. The class clowns are always men. They're always boys, right? For a reason, because men get criticized. If they're not funny, if they're not cool, if they don't fit in, if they're not this, that, the other thing. So, I think that's another thing I noticed too. The vast majority of comics, comedians. Think of a great comic comedian. You're going to think of a man, right? Almost invariably. And it's not because women are oppressed. Don't give me this bullshit that women are oppressed. It's just because women just aren't fucking. Maybe they're just not fucking funny. I think that's a very real possibility. But my intention in this video is not to trigger anybody, but it's just to kind of. I'm going off on a tangent here a bit. This is almost 8 minutes, but yeah. So, in terms of gender relationship between the sexes in society and dating, and which I've spoken about in previous videos, is just a bunch of bullshit. It's a big circle jerk. It's a big, just sticky, messy, smelly turd pile of festering shit. I don't even know what to describe it, but it's just not something. I look at it just from an observational point of view, and I'm like, what sane, self-respecting man would want to fucking participate in that? Would want part of that whole little mating ritual called dating? It's stupid. It's pathetic. I always said, you know what? If somebody's gonna come into my life and I'm gonna think that, hey, you know what, this is somebody who I could see myself sharing my life with, and really, opening up to, then it would just happen. Just as a natural product of me being who I am and the trajectory, whatever particular trajectory my life is going in. Okay. And I've gotten to the point now where I am quite content with just being alone, with living like a monk sort of life, just single and celibate. That's how I've been most of my life anyway. So I've only ever been on one real actual date, and it was a double date, and it was 8-9 years ago or something like that, and it was really just to support a friend. I wasn't even really interested in whatever. But yeah, and it was just stupid. We just paid for these girls' dinners, and nothing ever really came of it. And I'm like, huh, okay. The girls were just really dull and kind of boring, and it was just my usual typical experience with women throughout my life. And again, this is not a women bashing video, but this is just my honest uh, point of view. I'm just being transparent. Um, yeah. So just kind of where I'm at now. The whole and this whole touching this regarding this whole gender relations, sex relations further. I guess you can't really talk about that without talking about feminism and men's rights and this whole drama going on, and also MGTOW. And MGTOW in particular, I want to touch on is that it's for those of you who don't know, MGTOW is an acronym, MGTOW, men going their own way. And I've realized that I don't identify as MGTOW, but I am MGTOW by default. I just happen to fall into that category. Now that being said, I'm a staunch individualist, and I don't believe in tagging myself with labels. So I am still a staunch individualist. I don't believe in identifying as a liberal or Democrat or a Republican, conservative, moderate, blah blah blah, like whatever. Any of that crap. I'm just a person. I'm an individual. I'm an individual viewpoint. Okay, in soul, first and foremost. And true courage is observation. That's what a good friend and mentor told me one time, that true courage is just observation, just look and listen. And most people don't want to do that. Most people have preconceived ideas that they just want coddled, so they just surround themselves with people who turn their lives into just one big echo chamber, pretty much. And that's the same thing on social media, is just an extension of that, pretty much. So yeah, I'm kind of fed up with that whole thing with dating, with these pickup artists who just pander to women's superficiality and vanity, and just to try to get laid, living for the gratification of their penises. And men and women are equally as pathetic in my view. In my perspective, people are going to argue either way with that, but I don't really care. No one's going to change my mind at this point, so don't even bother to try. But yeah, men are turds and women are polished turds. I'll just leave it at that. But they're turds. It's still just a bunch of turds running around. Humans are just like maggots, just with arms and legs and reproductive organs and brains that they maybe use once in a while when it suits them, but usually don't. And yeah, so I guess this was really like a rant, like a catharsis type video, but really, guys, the solution is just be a person, just be a fucking person, just be an individual, be an individualist before you subscribe to any sort of ism, which I don't. Just be an individual, be a person. Try to have a 180-degree viewpoint of reality as much as you can, an impartial sort of viewpoint of reality as much as you can. And in regards to the whole MGTOW thing, which is something that I have been looking into, to a lesser degree the men's rights issues, but when you look into MGTOW, you're going to learn about men's rights, just as kind of an extension of that. Just you can't really avoid it, because it's about men's issues, men going their own way. And the reason why they're doing that is because society is totally rigged and horribly, disgustingly biased against men, especially with legislation and the divorce courts and child custody cases, and how people could use a child as a weapon in a divorce dispute is just appalling. And it's quite common. Okay, something like half the kids being born in this country are being born into single mother homes. And am I supposed to believe that women are just that much more competent as caregivers, as to raise children? Come on, bullshit. I think any of us who take a real good hard look and observe at what's going on around us on a societal level, and even reflecting in our own lives. I know if I reflect in my own lives, I can name off several men, good men, who had their lives ruined by women. My father's one of those people. But I'm not going to air my dirty laundry on here too much. But just you know, just feel the need to call out some of the bullshit because I'm really sick of it. People really need to start speaking up for. They need to, especially men. You just take your tail out of between your leg. I'm not gonna take your tails out from between your legs and, find your voice. Whatever masculinity means for you, that's what it means for you. If you want to just reject the whole notion of masculinity, which is really decided by women anyway, by and large, then do that. I mean, I've pretty much done that. I couldn't care less what women think of me or what other men. I couldn't really, deep down, I couldn't really care less. I mean, there are still some feelings I get and whatever, blah blah blah, just impressions I get and that kind of irritations that exist just being in a human body. That's just kind of how it is. But deep down, I know at that soul level, none of this is really even relevant. It has nothing to do with who we are as individuals, as souls, and that's really, I guess, I'll tie it into that and just kind of leave it there. That we are all individuals, and from a spiritual point of view. So all these women, strutting around like they're princesses and goddesses and queens and all this sort of crap. It's like, your shit stinks just like men's shit stinks, especially if you're eating the same diet. Matter of fact, most women's shit, most of these bitches walking around strutting around like goddesses and princesses and like they walk on air, their shit probably smells worse than mine does because I'm a raw vegan. So yeah, so kind of a weird point to leave the video off of, but oh well. Just part of the whole human experience. And just another thing I want to touch on very briefly is the whole, something I'm really disgusted and repulsed by and getting more and more repulsed by over time is just the hypersexualization of our society and culture in general, and just how fixated and obsessed people are with superficial nonsense and just sex in general. Most people, it triggers sexuality in most people, but for me it's getting to the point where it really it does the opposite. It triggers asexuality in me, and I went through it. It's funny because I went through an asexual phase a couple of years ago, and I find myself going more towards that direction, but more consciously this time. And I would just much rather be totally done with that and just live the rest of my life like a monk and just be celibate and just have no regard for it whatsoever. I'm really, really at that point. And if I think that if it's my point of view that if one really wants to live a transcendental sort of life, that's something that they have to confront and wrestle with. They're sort of little perverted little sexual demons that have been implanted in them, through years of propaganda and exposure to mass media and pornography and all this sort of crap. Filth is really what it is. But yeah, you got to spend time alone and find out what do you feel impelled towards. What do you feel impelled to say and do, and what direction you feel impelled to go in your life, and just do that, and forget about what anybody else thinks, because it's irrelevant. Most people are just projecting anyway. They're projecting their insecurities and their nonsense anyway. Most people, they don't really care about you. So why would you care about other people's opinions about how you're living your life? Especially when those same people don't give a single shit about you. They don't. Okay. And that's really a harsh truth. That's a harsh truth that most people never really take a good hard look at and confront in their own life. And it's sad. And I try more and more, as angry and upset, as irritated as I get, I try my best to see the world through a compassionate lens. I don't look at people as, meat suits. Like I said, I don't look at people like pieces of meat. I don't look at women as pieces of meat or men or whatever, or I don't size people up like that anymore. Or if I do, on the off occasion that I do, I try to catch myself, because there is still the aspect of, interacting with the human sort of, interface or whatever you want to call it. But yeah. So do your best to. I would encourage you to do your best to see the world through a compassionate lens. Give people your attention, because people are hurt. People are hurt. They're wounded. People have traumas. They're not blank slates, But don't be afraid to give. But at the same time, don't be afraid to use discernment either. So I'll leave it at that. This is over 20 minutes. Rambled on long enough. I hope you're well, and if you made it this far, congratulations. And that's it for now. Let me know your thoughts down below. And Baraka Bashad, and that means may the blessings be. Take care, everybody.